Hey everyone, it's Debbie Hatch coming on for Friday Night Live. A little bit later than normal, but I'm trying to figure out my schedule, and to be honest with you, I forgot that it was Friday. I don't know where the heck the week goes. But anyway, I'm on here. Really wasn't sure what I was going to talk about until just a couple of minutes ago, but spent time today talking to, I will say, another widow who had a spouse pass away. So I just really want to stress the importance of you taking care of your family members and letting them know what is available to them, letting them know the processes that they need to go through if something happens to you, because it's always really difficult to try to help people who are going through the grieving process also try to figure out the paperwork and try to just figure out what's going on. So I want to ask you, please, if there's any way that you can avoid doing that to your family, that you please just take a couple of minutes and do it. Make it as easy for them as possible. So I am Debbie Hatch, the owner and CEO of Pinnacle Personnel Services. And what I want to talk to you tonight about is those federal benefits that are available to your family when something does happen to you. And I'm specifically talking to federal employees, although some of these benefits are applicable even to what I'll call private sector employees, right? Those that are not working for the federal government. So I want to talk about the potential benefits available if somebody dies at work, if somebody dies while they're still employed, but not necessarily at work, somebody dies after they retire, because all of these things can be a little bit different. And I want to specifically mention something that's called the Public Safety Officers Benefit, which is available to our public safety officers. These include federal firefighters, law enforcement officers, probation and parole, customs and border protection officers, folks that are in those types of jobs. If they die in the line of duty, there's additional money that's payable to their family members as well. I want to talk about what you might have for federal employees group life insurance and how you make sure that your family knows about those benefits as well. Those can change if somebody dies while they're still working, or if somebody dies after they retire, because once you retire, you will make a decision about how that life insurance looks. So we've got one thing going on while we're working, but whatever we carry into retirement, it can change a little bit depending on our choices. I've talked about that before, and I don't mind talking about that again, but I'm not going to get deep into the life insurance specifically. I'm going to talk about it as part of this overall package for what's available when somebody does pass away. And then something that's called the order of precedence, because ideally we will do our paperwork. We will do our paperwork. And the paperwork is called the designated beneficiary, where you identify who you want to get specific pots of money. That takes precedence over everything. But if you haven't done a designated beneficiary form, and sometimes people don't, then there's a list that we would use, and that list is called the order of precedence. So essentially we go down through the list from top to bottom, and the first person we come to is the person that we're going to give that money to. So I'm just going to use these slides to kind of help keep me on track. I want to do it very brief. I try to keep these things to 20 minutes when I can, 30 minutes at the most, because I don't want to turn it into a whole class session. If you're working for the federal government in a non-temporary position, you are paying into the retirement account. And you can see that if you look at your pay stub. Every week they subtract a little bit of money. It's 7% biweekly if you're under CSRS. It's between 0.8 and 4.4 biweekly if you're under FERS and you're not a special provision employee. If you are a special provision employee, then you pay the normal FERS rate plus an additional 0.5. But that money that you're paying into retirement can be left to someone else. If you die before retirement, or if you die a short time after you retire and you haven't recouped all the money that you put in there, it can be left to someone else. So I want to talk about that. If you're under FERS but not CSRS, then you might also be eligible for a FERS supplement at retirement. And if you're eligible for it and you die and you have a spouse that is under 60, they can also become eligible for that supplement. The TSP that you contribute to, that the federal government contributes to on your behalf as well, can be left to someone else. And there is a designated beneficiary form, like I said, for all of these. The one for the money that you're putting into the retirement, that 7%, 0.8 to 4.4 plus the additional 0.5. It's a standard form 2808 if you are a CSRS person, and a 3102 if you are a FERS person. And I'll come back to this list in a minute, but I want to pull this up so that people have the ability to freeze their screen and write down the addresses to get these forms if that's something that they want to do. So all of the paperwork is available right at opm.gov. You can click on forms and then just type in the form number, or you can just transcribe the hyperlink as I have it right here on this slide, which should be a really, really good resource for you. Number one is whoever's on that paperwork. But again, not everybody does it, right? So here's your list, your order of precedence. If you haven't done a designated beneficiary form and you're married, by default, we will automatically give the money to your surviving spouse. If you're not married, we will look to see if you have any children, and the money will be distributed to them. They can be adult married children. They don't have to be dependents. If you don't have any children, we're going to look to see if your parents are still living, and if so, they will receive the money. If your parents have predeceased you, we continue to go down the list. Now, in the next spot is the will or the estate. I tell my students in class all the time that this shocked me the first time I read the regulation. I always assumed that the will would take precedence, and it doesn't, because that's a state document and these are federal benefits that we're talking about. So if you want that to go to the number one spot, you do have to do your designated beneficiary form. Same thing if you have established a trust and you want the money to go to that trust, you've got to do the designated beneficiary forms in order to make that happen. Okay, so again, I've given you the links to them so that you can go directly to OPM and print out forms, sign them, date them. You're going to turn them into your human resources office so that they can be uploaded into your electronic official personnel file. 2 of them are going to go in there. One's going to go back to the Thrift Savings Program office, and one is going to go to the Office of Personnel Management. But the forms are very, very specific in the instructions what you need to do with them. There are a lot of mistakes made when people are filling out these designated beneficiary forms. So I just want to bring some of those forward so you don't make those. Sometimes people forget to sign the forms. They don't have to be notarized, but they do have to be signed in front of a couple of witnesses, and those witnesses cannot be listed as potential designated beneficiaries themselves, obvious reasons. The form does have to be pristine when you send it in. No crossouts, no whiteouts, no erasures, nothing like that. Make sure that it is absolutely perfect. Follow the instructions. Each of these forms has 3 to 5 pages of instructions that will tell you specifically if you want to leave it to this person, but you'd like to say if that person dies before you do, then you want to leave it here. It tells you how to do that. You want to identify more than one designated beneficiary. It tells you how to do that. You want to do the will. You want to do the trust. It tells you how to do that. Please write it exactly as the examples in the instructions tell you to. And one mistake that people make is that sometimes they've got multiple beneficiaries, but when we total, they gave 20% to this person and 30% to this person and 30% to this person. When we total it up, it doesn't equal 100. That's going to cause this form to be invalid. So you don't want that to happen. Please make sure that it is exactly as written in the instructions, that it does total 100, that you have signed it in front of 2 witnesses who are not designated beneficiaries themselves. And share this information with your family. Please do that. You can go through the process of talking to an estate attorney and coming up with an estate plan, drafting legal documents. A lot of people do that, and that's awesome. But at the very least, sit down with a notebook or a folder, write down everything you have. Here's my savings, my checking, my investments, my TSP, my this, my that. I have designated beneficiary form. Put a copy of it in there. And if you don't want to share it with someone right now, at least tell someone that you care about where they can find it. If something happens to me, I want you to go to this filing cabinet in the second drawer or wherever it is. But please let them know and put everything in the folder that they're going to need to go through this paperwork process so that they don't have to dig around for it. It's just going to make it so much easier for them. If you have retired already, then when you retire, you make a decision about whether you're going to leave a survivor benefit or not. Kind of like life insurance. You pay some money for it while you're living so that if you pass away, they get something. We've talked about that before. You can pull that up in one of the previous videos. We'll talk about it again. But survivor benefits are decided at retirement and they cost you something. If you die while you're still employed by the federal government, and please notice how I'm saying this, okay? I didn't say if you die at work, you don't have to be working. But if you are employed by the federal government on the day that you die and you're married, your spouse is eligible for payment as long as you have worked for at least a year and a half, 18 months. The amount changes annually, so you can see on the slide that it totals just over $35,000. Plus, they get a payment that equals half of your annual salary or half of your average high three, whichever is greater. The surviving spouse has the option of taking those payments as a single lump sum, or they can spread it out in equal monthly installments for the next 3 years. They will choose. Now, I've done classes before. I had a lady in a class who said, yes, my spouse passed away, he worked for the federal government, and they gave it to me in a lump sum. Please tell people not to do that because this is taxed. And that is true. Life insurance is not, but this is taxed. And I would say that was really good intent, and I'm so glad that she shared her experience with me. Know that if you're getting a lump sum, yes, it can have an impact on your taxes, but also know that maybe some people don't want to spread it out over 3 years because they want to get this lump sum payment to take care of some financial stuff that they have to take care of now that their spouse has passed away. Completely up to them. But again, it might be something that you want to talk to your spouse about so they have a concrete plan. Now, they get those 2 lump sums if you've worked for at least 18 months. If, in fact, before you pass, you have 10 years or more of creditable service, then they're also eligible for a monthly benefit. And that one is computed by essentially pretending that you didn't die, but you just retired. How much time do you have? What's your high three average salary? What's the formula that you're eligible for? What would your retirement have been? And if you're a first person, they would get half of that. If you're a CSRS person, they would get 55% of that as their monthly benefit. When you die, if you have dependent children that are under the age of 18, unmarried, they are eligible for a benefit as well. And that amount is monthly. Again, it's right there on the slide. It changes every single year. They do have to be dependent children. So normally up to the age of 18, if you have a disabled child, they're eligible to get that benefit regardless of age, but they did have to become disabled prior to having their 18th birthday. So just be aware that's a little bit different. For those public safety officers that I mentioned, people like firefighters, law enforcement officers, probation and parole, customs and border protection officers, if they die in the line of duty. So for the one I just talked about, it didn't have to be in the line of duty, right? They just had to be employed by the government at the time. This one is death in the line of duty, and it is up to $370,376 this year. It does change each year. It uses the same list that I showed you previously, except it doesn't go all the way down to the will. It can't be left to an estate. Short of that, the top of the list is exactly the same. And this benefit is going to be administered by the Department of Justice for all public safety officers, regardless of the agency that that person themselves works for. Again, in retirement, you choose a survivor benefit or you choose not to. So I'm going to skip over these. We've talked about them before. And if there's an interest, we can definitely talk about them again. But like life insurance, for the survivor benefit that you pick up at retirement, there's a cost. You pay for that as long as you're living, so that your spouse can get a monthly benefit should you pass away before they do. I've got an example here. Again, you can freeze your screen and definitely look at that, but I don't want to take up time talking about it simply because I'm trying to get through everything in such a quick amount of time. I mentioned already, if you retire under an option that does pay you the FERS supplement, you're getting it and you die, your spouse is under 60, they too are eligible for the supplement. You would get it until you have your 62nd birthday. A surviving spouse would get it only until they had their 60th birthday. Not all options qualify for the supplement. Again, I need to take that slide out because we're not talking about the supplement tonight. When a spouse dies, Social Security needs to be contacted as well. The Social Security Administration has a lump sum benefit that they pay out. It's not a whole lot of money. It's $255, but it is $255. And dependent children are eligible for benefits. Spouses are eligible for benefits, be that a widow or a widower's benefit. They do have to be at least 60 to draw that unless they are taking care of a dependent child. There are, though, earning restrictions for this spouse until they have their full retirement age for Social Security, which is going to be between 66 and 67, depending on the year that that person was born. But that's definitely something to check out. It is a TSP Form 3 that you fill out as your designated beneficiary for the account. This uses that order of precedence. We've already gone through the list. But if you are leaving your TSP to your spouse, they have the option of leaving it right in TSP if they want. They do not have to be a federal employee themselves. They don't have to, but if they want to, they can leave that in TSP or they can withdraw that. If they leave it in TSP, that beneficiary account is going to convert to a life cycle account based upon that person's date of birth, or they can elect withdrawals from it. If you have the life insurance, please let your family know what you have. FEGLI has 4 parts to it. The first is called Basic. Basic is the really inexpensive one. If you die, it is valued at your annual basic pay, rounded up to the closest thousand, plus $2,000, unless you're under 45. Because for federal employees that die prior to having their 35th birthday, FEGLI pays out double. Once they have their 35th birthday, the value of that policy does decrease at 10% per year until they're 45 or older. Then there's nothing extra added in there. And there is an accidental death and dismemberment rider with our federal employees group life insurance that pays an additional $10,000 for basic and for option A if the person is involved in an accident that causes them to lose a limb, to lose their eyesight, or if their death was accidental, which means that it was something that happened really quickly. It wasn't a long-standing illness or something like that. In addition to having basic, you might have option A, which is an extra $10,000. Option B, where you pick a multiple of 1 through 5 times your annual salary, or option C, which would allow you to have life insurance on your family. You can have up to $2,500 for your children, but only to age 22, $5,000 for your spouse, and you multiply those numbers 1 through 5. Again, the nature of the work that I do, I've met many people over the years who said, well, how would I even find out if my parent had this? Normally they're talking about their parent that was a federal employee. They shouldn't have that question. We need to let people know what we have going on so that they know how to begin that process. Once again, I know I get on a soapbox about this, guys, but that's because it's so important, because I get these calls routinely and I really care about trying to help people, and I'm going to, but it would be nice if you would help your family members too. Do your paperwork. Make sure you're doing your designated beneficiaries. Put together your notebook or your folder. Have copies of your paperwork in there. Let somebody know where that paperwork is so that they don't have to dig for it. And check it once in a while. You're not going to want to update your designated beneficiary forms once a year, but maybe you look at them once a year just to make sure that they are accurate and they say exactly what you want them to say. Okay, so there is your Friday Night Live. Thank you so much for joining me. Let me know. You do, Brent Hatch. That's absolutely true. Let me know, guys, if there's anything that you want me to talk about for a topic for my Friday Night Lives. I always appreciate your input. Thank you so much. If you have questions about anything that I've said in this one, drop them in the comments. I will get back to you. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy your weekend, okay? Take care. Evidently, I need to go and talk about some benefits available here.